guys, welcome back to my channel. I wasn't originally going to do a 2025 reading wrap up because I felt like I had an underwhelming reading year, but when I really looked back at the books that I read, I actually read amazing books. I didn't read a lot of books. Well, I did read a lot of books. It's just a lot less than I'm used to, but there are some amazing books in there, so I decided to do this. This is my 2025 reading wrap up. It was definitely a year of quality over quantity, even though that wasn't intentional. I'm gonna be ranking them from worst to best because I just feel like that's so much fun. It's what I did last year, and I thought that it would be fun to do something with my hands while I'm doing this, so I'm going to be baking. If you've watched my channel before, you might know that I'm not very good at baking. Even the ready-made stuff, I'm just not that good at it, but I love baked goods, so I'm not giving up. I'm gonna be baking biscoff white chocolate chip cookies. That sounds so good to me. I looked through the recipe, I even wrote it out to try to get acquainted with it, and I'm not gonna say it's easy. It seems manageable. Hoping for the best. For this ranking, it's mostly just going to be about the placement of these books and like figuring out what were the worst books and what were the best books of the year. I'm not gonna go too much in detail about each book. I think there's a couple of them that I read in December that I didn't read in other vlogs that I might give more context to, but other than that, it's gonna be very much short little what I thought of the book and why it landed on the ranking the way that it did. I have my laptop here, and the first thing that I wanted to talk about were my storygraph stats. So I read 56 books, 22,448 pages. My first book of the year was Real, and my last book of the year was The Best Worst Thing. Both bangers, by the way. The genres I spent the most time with include romance, contemporary fiction, literary fiction, sports fiction, and fantasy. Interesting. I don't know if these are the genres I spent the most time with, or these are just all the genres that I read. I don't know. My longest book was Redeeming 6 with 766 pages, which is also my longest book of last year because this was a reread. And my shortest book was A Movable Feast with 211 pages. I'm also not going to talk about DNFs in this video because I DNF'd so many books during my book slump, I kind of just lost track of DNFs. So my average rating was 4.1, which is amazing. I think I was actually at a point though where if I wasn't reading a book that I thought was going to be perfect, I was just DNFing it, which was a huge part of the book slump. So those are the storygraph stats. I'm gonna get my ingredients ready. We can get to baking while I get into each book and the ranking. All right, so the first step is to just preheat the oven. The butter also needs to be melted. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that on the stovetop. So the first section of books that I'm gonna talk about are the duds. These are not books that I would really recommend. Actually, you should run the other way. Don't read these. At 56 is Wildcard, and this male main character was just really immature to me and it gave me the ick. At 55 is The Perfect Find, and I remember really hating this book. I remember it just was not an enjoyable experience. I don't remember all the details of why I hated it so much, but I didn't like it. I found it cringy. I do remember the end though. The end was ridiculous, and it's also so hard to overall love a book when the end is bad. Love Arranged, basically for all of 2025, or most of 2025, I was having this struggle with romance books where I felt like they just felt so insincere and the dialogue never felt genuine. It never felt like this is how people really talked. It just all felt a little bit ridiculous to me. So that was a bit of a struggle that I had with romance in general, but this one specifically, I also remember it was a really long book where there was a lot of back and forth that felt unnecessary. Love in Bloom, I remember this entire book just feeling quite pointless. I remember thinking that nothing about this is really that interesting. It was just it was just there. There's a little bit of plot twist somewhere in the middle of this book, and even the plot twist was like, this feels so random, but I feel like potentially other people could like that. I just didn't. It felt random and weird, just weirdly placed. Not in Love is a book that I feel like deserves a little bit of credit just for being a book that I was able to finish while I was so in a deep book slump, but it's not really that memorable. I remember there were a lot of intimate scenes, and that's kind of the point of the book, so I'm not knocking that. It's just that the actual romance part of it, not really memorable. Actually, the entire book in general, it's just not that memorable. Now, A Family Matter is a book that I read in December that I felt like was a really important story. It was a book about a lesbian mother who was in the midst of losing custody of her child because she wanted a divorce. Obviously, she was in love with a woman. She had to go through like a court case and all of that, and it felt like such an important story. It's historical fiction. I think what year? I think that the trial was happening in the 80s, and then the other timeline was 2022, obviously, when things are a lot different. I remember feeling like this just feels so real, and when I read the author's note, it said that the author did research and talked to lawyers and tried to make things like accurate to cases that at that time, so that's why it felt so real. It felt like a really important topic to write about, but the execution of this book, I just didn't like the execution of how it was done. I feel like this author was writing as if she had some kind of page limit. Like they said, girl, you can't go over 200 and something pages, because there's so much that we didn't go deep into. Like, obviously during that time, a lot of her family and friends abandoned her when she was coming out she wasn't even exactly coming out. She was found out and people were kind of just talking. So around that time, she was abandoned by her family and friends, and that was like mentioned. She says that, and it was kind of just brushed over with the different timelines. She was like, yeah, I was going through a hard time. She says it, and we don't get to see it for ourselves. The child involved, the child who obviously grew up without a mother because of this trial, she also had some struggles with that, growing up without a mother, and we also don't see that. That's also something that's just kind of mentioned. And I just feel like we could have had 150 more pages going into these moments, and it would have been so much better. I think I would have felt more attached to the characters, but yeah, that's just not the case. That's just not what happened. And I feel like that was a lost opportunity. Also, there was a moment of the mother and the daughter reuniting, and I just don't like the way that they reacted when they reunited. Like, that's more of a personal preference. It felt, obviously people are different. You don't know how you're gonna act in that situation, but it just felt so dry. Like, this is your first time seeing each other in 40 years. Do you not have more to say? Anyway, that's how I felt about that. I felt like it was great that this topic was being written about, and I felt like it was great that there were depictions of history in there, but I just don't think the book overall was done well. Okay, now in a small bowl, I gotta do the flour, baking soda, and salt. I feel like people who are really professional at this would sift this. I don't have a big enough sifter for that. So I'm just gonna hope for the best here. Okay, so Summer in the City, I feel like this was a very cheesy, cliche rom-com, and if you go into it knowing that, you can really enjoy this. My problem with them was that the female main character had the weirdest issues with money, and the male main character was a billionaire. So she had weird issues with money, and his money, realistically, it's not gonna work. And that was just kind of like annoying me. I remember even in the book, her friend like snapped at her and was like, you're so annoying about money. So I felt validated there, but overall, this book is just also very forgettable too. So in a large bowl, I now have to do the butter, the biscoff spread, the brown sugar, the eggs, the vanilla extract. So basically the rest, everything else. In the Weeds. So this is a book that I enjoy in the moment and I just never think about it again. I don't really remember much about it. And I think it's so funny that when a lot of people were doing their wrap-ups and they were talking about BK Borson's 2025 release, I think it's called First Time Caller, they were basically saying the same thing. Like, it's good in the moment, it was cute, they remember having a good time, but they just don't really remember, or they don't ever think about it again. And I feel like this is a recurring thing with this author. That's how I feel about all the books in the series. Read it for a good time, but you'll probably forget about it. We're now coming into books that I feel like were decent. They weren't my favorite. They were good. I feel like people could potentially like them more than me. Only for the Week is a book that I remember I really enjoyed the drama, but I didn't like the dialogue at all. This is definitely one of the books that I'm like, the dialogue really annoyed me. I did not check to see how much biscoff I have. I need half cup, I don't have enough. Anyway, yeah, this is definitely one of those where I hated the dialogue, but good drama in this book though, really good drama. Problematic Summer Romance is another book that I feel like deserves some praise for getting me through a book slump, because this was the first book that I actually enjoyed while I was in this book slump. The only thing I remember about it is that Ali Hazelwood, she kind of does this thing where her side characters are actually quite important, and I think in a different time I would have enjoyed this a lot, but at that moment I just needed the storyline with the main characters to be moved along. I just needed to get to the point, and that was all. But yeah, this is definitely one of those where the family and friends are important to the story as well. So Deep Cuts is a book that I'm actually so sad about. I'm so sad that it isn't higher rated on my ranking, because I had such high expectations for it. I just felt like the book didn't do enough. Like, the tension between the characters could have been way more. But when I did read it though, I had this feeling of like, I think this will still make a really good movie. And turns out it is going to be a movie, so that's great. And originally Austin Butler was casted for it, but he had to drop out for some reason, and now Drew Starkey is gonna be the lead of that movie. I am so excited. I love Drew Starkey and I feel like he's gonna do this well. 1/4 cup of white sugar, 2/3 cups of brown sugar. I'm gonna do 1/3 of light and 1/3 of dark. I feel like they both serve a purpose when it comes to baking, so I don't know, half and half, and the recipe does not specify. So 45 is Onyx Storm, and I loved Fourth Wing, and I also loved Iron Flame. I read those back to back, and I will always think that it contributed to the entire experience, not having to wait for the next book. But I did have to wait a little bit for Onyx Storm, and I feel like that wait, like, it's not that I forgot what was going on, but I just was not as immersed into the world as I originally was when I was reading them back to back. And this is a book that just feels like they're dragging it on a bit so that it can be a longer series. I do feel like this is a series that could have nicely wrapped up in a 3rd book, but it obviously didn't, and there's gonna be 2 more. I don't know where I'm going with this series. I don't know if I'm continuing it. I don't know how I feel about it. I think if I'm continuing it, I need to wait until both the final books are out and then just reread the entire series back to back. And I think that'll be the best experience for me. But I don't know. I don't know if when the 4th book comes out, the hype is gonna get to me. I hope not. Overall, this was quite a disappointment for my expectations, but it was fine. I had some good moments and I did enjoy bits of it. Let's not forget the eggs. We all know what happens when I forget eggs. Okay, I need some. How much of this vanilla extract do I need? Oh my god, that smells so good. Why do I want to eat that by itself? It's the Biscoff. So Rewind It Back is the next book. This is the final book in the Windy City series, and I really love the second, third, and fourth books in this series. So obviously I hyped up the last book and expectations were too high. I feel like this book also does this thing where, and it happens, the main character Rio, throughout the series, he was such a goofball, but when we get to his book, obviously we're diving deeper into his feelings and what he has going on. So it's not gonna be all fun and games and laughs. I knew that for sure, but I just feel like so much of his personality was kind of erased. Like, I get that we have to learn about his trauma, I guess, or what he has been through in life, but it just feels like the way that we know him to cope with jokes and being funny and like being the goofball, I feel like that kind of disappeared a little bit. And yeah, no one wants to lose that from their favorite character. Next, I have holiday romance. Every time I read Christmas books, my expectations are so low. And I actually end up enjoying them. This one was a really good one. I remember the only thing is that sometimes the male main character came off kind of nonchalant, but he wasn't. He was just coming off that way in some moments, and it just wasn't making sense to me. So it wasn't like perfect, but I really enjoyed it. I had fun reading it. The next one is also a holiday read, Baggage Claim. Loved this one even more. It's just such a short and sweet book. The next book is P.S. I Hate You. This book is very entertaining, but low-key chaotic. And I think that's what makes it entertaining. It's honestly very, I don't know what I was expecting going into it, but I felt like a lot of things caught me off guard. There was kind of a big reveal at the end, and I'm like, I didn't think it was this kind of book. Like, I wasn't expecting anything to happen. And so I was like, okay, that like contributed to the chaos. I liked it. I enjoyed their journey. The female main character is a little bit immature. I feel like when you read it, you might find her annoying. And then there's also the fact that it was unexpectedly spicy. I didn't expect that at all. I think if you go into it knowing like it's not gonna be that big of a deal, but me not knowing, I was like, this feels so random. It's also a book about grief. Like, the two main characters are grieving, and I feel like it was still a fun book even though that they're grieving. That makes me sound kind of crazy, but yeah, that's what this one's about. I don't like how this is looking. Why does it look so like there's too much flour? Maybe this is why people sift. All right, I'll just keep folding it in, hoping for the best. Am I missing? I'm not missing anything. No. We're gonna move on with the books. From Lukoff with Love. So Maria Zapata always has these really slow burn romance books, and it's always such a change of pace from what I'm like currently consuming. Like, I would be consuming really fast-paced books. I love fast-paced books, and so every time I pick up a Mariana Zapata book randomly and it feels nice and slow, that's always a good change of pace. The Wedding People. So this is a book that honestly I feel like could have been higher on the ranking if I didn't have such high expectations. I thought this was gonna be a 5-star read, and it just didn't, it wasn't that, obviously. I feel like one of my things with this, I remember thinking that the main character was always, not always, but a lot of times she was on the outside of the conversation, like observing the wedding people, which I'm pretty sure is the point of the book. So I'm not complaining about it, I just personally didn't enjoy it. And so if I don't enjoy the point of the book, then clearly it's not for me. There were still lots of good moments in there though, and I think the greater message I enjoyed. Too many expectations, that's what it is. The next book is A Movable Feast, the only classic that I read this year. I enjoyed this book. I think it's a good book about appreciating the small things in life, the simple things in life, and I think it's also a good motivation if you're trying to get into creative writing. Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez is a very typical Abby Jimenez book where she discusses more serious topics that people go through, but also she has a way of keeping it lighthearted. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people didn't like about her 2025 release, Say You'll Remember Me, is because that one was just so sad. Like, I don't think she kept it lighthearted in that one. Although I really liked that one, it's actually higher up on the ranking. So that's just a personal thing, how you're gonna feel about it. But I do love how in past Abby Jimenez books, she has a way of talking about these like serious topics, whether it's physical or mental illness, but also there's the rom-com side of it. There's the fun, flirty, just a good positive side to it, even though the characters are going through a lot. I really love this one. If you like Abby Jimenez writing in general, I think you'll like this one. I was meant to crush up 5 of these, but I completely forgot about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At 36, we have Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan, and I feel like Kennedy Ryan is another author that knows how to incorporate people's real life struggles into a romance book and still like keep it romantic. And Kennedy Ryan definitely has way heavier books than Abby Jimenez. I would say so anyway, but I do think she knows how to incorporate it into a romance book. These books are still the type of books where you see people falling in love and just being there for each other throughout their struggles. So 35, The God of the Woods. I really loved the audiobook for this one, and it took me a really long time to read it because I like ran out of hours, and so I had to wait for my hours to be renewed. But I still really loved the book. That didn't stop me from enjoying it. I feel like the ending was very realistic. And maybe that's a good thing to some people, but to me it was kind of boring. I wanted more of a bang. And that's why it's like not a perfect book, but I really enjoyed the journey it took me on. I have Keeping 13 next on the list, and I was rereading some of the Boys of Tommen books just to get ready for releasing 10, and then they made me so sad I never ended up reading releasing 10, so there's that. Wait for It by Marion Zapata, another one of her slow burn books, her slow burn romance books, and I just love these. I feel like you just spend time with them on a daily basis, and by the end of it, you can't even imagine them without each other. Like, their lives just melt together in a beautiful way, and you're like, yeah, they're meant to be. I then have The Air He Breathes. This book was so dramatic, but like in the best way possible. It really kept my attention throughout, but the ending was such a bang. It was so good, and it was unexpected too. I don't know, when I picked this up, I kind of just wanted to read something on my Kindle, and it was random, and I had no expectations, but I was hooked. I was hooked. I feel like it's looking slightly better. Guys, there's hope. The next book is Ready or Not, and this is the first accidental pregnancy trope I have ever enjoyed and ever like really loved. I feel like Cara Bestone is easily an auto-buy author now. This one's so good. Would it really be that bad if I just pray for me? 30 and 29, Saving 6 and Redeeming 6. I already said was rereading these for releasing 10. Never got to it. Got too sad. The recipe said to scoop them out in large things, but I still wonder if I did them too big. Okay, so they didn't all go in at once because I was afraid to put them too close together because they are huge, they're chunky. So we can see what happens to the first batch. Maybe if something goes wrong, we can try to correct it. I don't know, but I'm doing them in 2 batches. Anyway, back to the books. So One Big Happy Family is another Christmas book that I really enjoyed. This is definitely top 2 Christmas books ever. This is a book that has so many different storylines between this family. Like, everyone in the family has a storyline, and they're all so interesting. You could never get bored, and I was so impressed by how the author wrapped up everyone's storyline so good in such a short book. Like, surely with how many people in the family there was, you think there were gonna be some loose ends, but no, it was so good. What a Happy Family. I remember really loving reading this book about an Indian family and their dynamics, and it just felt so real and raw, and the way that it was written was so captivating because like people had secrets and stuff and all of that. So this one was really good. Part of Your World, this was another reread, and I remember enjoying this the second time way more than I did the first time. I remember actually laughing out loud. I think when I read books, sometimes I would think they're funny, but I don't actually laugh out loud. It's more of a thought. Yeah. But I was actually laughing out loud for Part of Your World. Wild Side, so my review of this book on Goodreads says that I think this is the best Elsie Silver book of the ones I've read, obviously. And the thing about that is that I don't really remember anything about this book, so I don't know how good it can really be. Maybe it was just me comparing her books to each other. Yeah. I apparently really enjoyed it. I don't remember though. Say You'll Remember Me, I already talked about this one and how sad it is. I was okay with that though. I think if you go into it knowing, you will have a better chance of enjoying it because obviously it comes around and they get it together, but it's just a really, really sad book and I was okay with that. There's a sense of hopelessness when I was reading it though, and I was like, how are they gonna be okay? How is anyone gonna be okay? Okay, so we're getting to the point of the books that I just think are amazing. I would absolutely recommend. Another Christmas book, The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. Now this is my favorite Christmas book of all time. It's so short and sweet and something was just happening on every page. It's this Knives Out-esque type of book. Like if you know the movie Knives Out, it's like that. It gives that vibe. And it's also involving rivals to lovers. My thing that like really shocked me with this book is that I did go into it expecting a fun time, but the two characters did have moments of getting deeper and we learned about their past, and I didn't expect that part at all. I was just here for a good time, and seeing that it had some emotional depth, that was like a plus. Real, my first book of the year. I always have high hopes when it comes to Candy Ryan, and she never really disappoints, and with this one it's no different. This was such a good forbidden romance because the tension was amazing, and then the drama with the side characters and the family, that was good too. Time of Your Life, oh my god. This male main character is the worst character I've ever read, and it was BJ for the longest time. BJ, another man written by Jessa Hastings. It was BJ for the longest time, and then she wrote Joa. Oh my, he's so aggravating. That didn't stop me from being entertained though. It's typical Jessa Hastings, toxic relationships, rich people. I loved the drama and I did enjoy this book. I remember this is one of the books that I read set in the 90s, but it just didn't really feel accurate to that. Like the only thing that reminded me they were in the 90s was the way that she spoke about her mobile phone. She talked about it like if it was an alien spaceship. One Golden Summer was such a pleasant surprise because I always have low expectations for Carly Fortune. I don't know, well I do know why, but we won't get into that. I always have low expectations, and this was such a good book. The description of summer, amazing, and just like the description of the lake, like it was the perfect atmospheric read for summer. And I think the only thing that brought this down a little bit for me and why it's not a perfect 5 stars is that there was like a brief moment that I kind of thought it was boring. But again, this was me like fighting a book slump, so I would take that with a grain of salt. This is a good book and I really do recommend it. Beg, Borrow, or Steal. I cannot explain the joy that this series brings me. They are such simple, cliche, predictable romance books in this series, but I love them so much. It's like going back to the classic rom-com. It's just too good. I think when you go into it knowing that's what you're gonna get, you could have a good time as well. I don't know if it's recency bias, but I think this is my favorite one of the series. It was so funny, and it also had moments of the characters exploring their vulnerabilities. I love that part too. I love this little town. Yours truly, wow, I didn't realize I read this much Abby Jimenez this year. This is another reread. Let's go get the cookies. Wait, they look kind of good. It says while it's still hot, I'm meant to break these in half and like put it in as decor. Why am I scared to do everything? I have no faith in myself. Why do I just feel like this is gonna ruin it? Wait, no, that actually looks kind of cute. You couldn't even really see what I was doing, but you know what I didn't pay attention to, which could have been helpful for the size? It's meant to make 12 cookies and I made 11. So one of them was definitely like way too big, but surely the size was like good enough if I made 11 instead of 12. I'm gonna try to show you what it looks like with the little pieces inside. Let's wait for it to cool, wait for the others to finish, and we can continue talking about the bugs. Okay, I don't even know exactly where it was, but I know it's talking about Yours Truly. This was another reread by Abby Jimenez that I feel like I enjoyed more the second time. I feel like I raised my rating. I also think I've realized that this is my second favorite Abby Jimenez book after Just for the Summer, so that's really fun. If it makes you happy, so this is a book that I feel like you need to read in the fall. It is so fall. If you missed it last fall and you're like, it doesn't matter, I'll just read it anytime. Don't. Be patient. Wait for next fall because you won't regret it. I have never read such an atmospheric book when it comes to fall, the fall season. I feel like there's a lot of them for summer, but specifically for fall, like the crunching of the leaves and talking about like wind and stuff, it's just so good. And how the weather felt, 10 out of 10. But other than that, I obviously love the characters in this book. I loved that the male main character was a single dad. His kids played a huge role in the book. The female main character had a dog, and the dog plays a really big role in the book, and it's like just all so wholesome. Very Gilmore Girls, but I think better. This is a really long book though, especially for romance. It's almost 500 pages. I think it's 490 something. And that feels kind of crazy for a romance book, but I really did enjoy being with them and hanging out with them and just being with their family for a long time. And the small town was a really good one too. So Talking at Night, this was an unexpected one because this was a book that I just picked up when I was in my book slump and I was just trying to read random things, seeing what would help me get through it, and this was one that really did help. It was so good. I think this is also a book that I'm crediting for making me realize I want to read literary love stories, like literary fiction that includes a love story. I feel like these are so much fun because you kind of don't know what to expect. I think with like regular romance books, what are they called? Just romance books in general, you're expecting this happy ever after, and it's usually very predictable. But I think with love stories in a literary fiction book, you never know what's gonna happen. Like, it could end in tragedy. Even though it isn't a guaranteed happy ending, I really do enjoy how these kind of stories always have such realistic conversations and dynamics between characters, and the connections between characters just feel so real. So I know for a fact that I want to read more of that in 2026, and this is one of the books that made me realize that. Atmosphere, I love the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid takes a topic that I'm not that interested in or that I don't know much about, and she makes me completely engage with it. She did this with like tennis, and now she did it with astronauts. I never thought that I would be reading a book that has so much details about space and astronauts, but she did it so well. It was so interesting. And this book, more than anything, is about the main character's relationships with the people in her life. I loved her romantic relationship and the romantic love that she experienced, and also the platonic relationships that she had. Some of them were like, you don't even realize that they're such good friends until a good portion into the book. And then also the relationship between her family members, her sister, God, I wanted to strangle her sister, but it was still great to read about. And her relationship with her niece is the best. best part of this book. So good. Dead of Night. Oh my god, this book is crazy. It's a thriller, so the less you know, the better when you're going into it, but people are stuck in a snowstorm in the middle of nowhere. Nothing good can come from that. You need to read this book. It's so good. Every single chapter ends on a cliffhanger, so you aren't gonna want to put it down. Before We Were Innocent, this is another unexpected book. I don't know, this was just like on my TBR for the longest time, and I decided to pick it up. I love the way that it was written, and there were twists and turns that the book took me on that I just wasn't expecting. I really liked this one. So the next two books are Rebel Witch and Heartless Hunter. I feel like these are the last YA books that I really truly enjoyed. I feel like they're just so much fun, and I really enjoyed the tension between the characters. I read these books when the second one had already come out. It's a duology, it's completed, so I felt like it was the perfect time for me to pick it up, and reading them back to back really is the perfect scenario. I feel like waiting for the next book to come out, like, it can create hype and anticipation and all that. That could be good too, but just fantasy especially, just reading them back to back, something about that just hits different for me. If you haven't read these yet, I really recommend it because the author just wrapped it up really nicely, and I think I love that she didn't try to make this a 5-book series or something, because she definitely could have tried. It would have probably annoyed people, but she didn't, and she ended it perfectly. So now on to the top 10 books of 2025. The Best Worst Thing, which was my final read of 2025. This one, I knew I would like it, but I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. I have a vlog really going into detail, and you can see my reservations about this book originally. I think it's just a part of the process of reading this because it's such a complicated situation that the main characters are going through. I was just like, are they handling it the best? I don't know. But once I was finished this book, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I also, I just had a good time, and I fell in love with the characters as it kept going on. So this is a 5-star read, and you definitely should read this one. The X-Files, this is a book that I would randomly think about all the time, and I keep thinking I need to read this author's other book. I think it's called You With a View. It's really good. This is another book that I was being very picky with when I first finished it. I think I gave it like 4.75 stars, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm pretty sure the reason I didn't originally give it 5 stars is because the way that it's written, they would like tell the story of their past as well, and like how they broke up too, through like these flashbacks that the main character would have, but they would kind of be in the middle of the story, and it just took a bit of adjusting to like get used to that writing, but once I did, fell in love. So it's a 5-star for me. I love these characters as well, and I love the ending of this book so much. I really want to reread it, and I really want to read the next book by this author. Before We Were Strangers, another reread. Every time I think about this book, I think about how this book moved me so much the first time I read it that I DM'd the author on Instagram and told her, like, I love this, it's the best thing I've ever read. I don't know what I was going through when I did that, but she was very kind. She responded and she was very kind about it. One thing I will say is I originally read this when I was in college, and I think my second time reading it was years later. Like, it was years between my first and second time, and I'm older now. I think the forefront of this book is miscommunication. There's a big miscommunication going on here, so if that's not your thing, you probably won't love this one. I remember when I first read this in college, I felt Grace, the main character, in my bones. I was like, I would have handled it the same way. I understand why she did everything the way that she did. And I think rereading it now that I'm older, frontal lobe a little bit more developed, I did have moments of like, wow, maybe you guys should have talked to each other. Like, maybe all this could have been avoided. I think this is also one of the books that made me realize you should read books about people your age, because you're going to relate more, obviously, but you're going to be so much more understanding. I think if I read this for the first time when I was older, I would have been like, are these people stupid? Just, no, we need to talk to each other. We need to communicate better. And that's so easy to say now, but I know for a fact, literally for a fact, that me in college would have handled it the same way, and me in college just understands Grace so much. I just love her as a main character. Every time I hear a Jeff Buckley song, I think of her. She's not even real, but she moved me. I love that character. I love that story. The characters just feel so real to me. One of my favorite books ever. If you are gonna read it and you're older, or maybe if you even are younger and in college and maybe you're just wiser than I was, have an open mind and understand that no one's perfect. Promise Me Sunshine, another book that I was kind of picky about, rating it 4.75, but then couldn't stop thinking about it. I know I did this though. The male main character at the beginning of this book was so weird. He was kind of odd, and I stand by that. But he really redeemed himself. I remember thinking, how is she gonna fall in love with him? How am I gonna fall in love with him? But he really redeemed himself, and I love their story so much. And I loved everything we learned about his past, and I love the way grief was represented in this book. I thought it was beautiful, and I think about this book a lot. And this is the book that made Cara Bastone an auto-buy author for me, so. The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings, another book about rich people drama. I loved this one a lot more. It's focused a lot on her family and their family drama. I really love that part of it, and like other Jessa Hastings books, it's very insta-love. I don't mind that. I think she does a good job at convincing me that they're actually meant to be, even though it's so insta-love and unrealistic. It's like, okay, I'm convinced, but yeah, I really like the family dynamics of this book. It's very toxic, but it's entertaining, and I loved seeing the main character heal from some of the stuff her family did to her in the past. Okay, so now for my top 5. This one might be controversial, but number 5 is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This book follows 2 different storylines, and I think if you don't like one of them, you're not going to enjoy the book. One of the storylines is about a socialite who is now in our older age, and we are learning a lot about her family and how she grew up and just things that happened throughout her life. And the other storyline is between 2 authors who are writing her biography, but they're also falling in love while doing so. They're getting to know each other and falling in love. So those are 2 different storylines, and yeah, if you don't like one, I know a lot of people, they were like, I don't know, I don't really believe in their romance. I don't think the romance was that great, and they liked Margaret's story and her part, but then other people thought Margaret's story and her part was boring. It was like, let's get to the romance between the 2 authors. So I think if you're not sold on them both, there's potential for you to not like this book. I enjoyed them both, and I actually really loved Margaret's story. I think something that I kind of took out of my mind when I was reading this is like a big focus on romantic love. I kind of found that there was love in so many forms throughout this book. Platonic love, love between family members, and of course the romantic love. But yeah, I just felt like love was being described between so many different people in her family line, and also the characters of today, you know? Yeah, I loved it. I loved it, and I'm sorry for who didn't. Number 4 is Us Against You by Frederick Backman. This is the 2nd book in the Beartown series. I feel like every time I read a Frederick Backman book, I'm a changed woman. I've noticed something with all of his books though. I'm currently reading The Winners, which is, it's actually right here. It's the 3rd book in the Beartown series. And I noticed after this book that every single book I've read by Frederick Backman, I've underlined, I've annotated something on the first page. Like, he's just so good at opening a story. There's always a banger of a sentence on the first page. And that is, it's so underrated. I feel like this slow build up, not saying that his books are fast paced by any means, but like, I wish more authors did something to reel me in, you know? The way that Frederick Backman writes about human connections and flawed people, like, I hate them so much, but I understand them deeply. I hate it. I think this series also does a good job of recapping the previous book without being too repetitive. Like, I did remember a lot of what went on, but everything was recapped in Us Against You. Same with The Winners, and I never felt like it was too repetitive, or I never got like annoyed by that. Us Against You is directly the aftermath of what happened in the first book, Beartown, and so I feel like I can't say too much about the plot. I could just tell you about how it made me feel. I literally don't care about hockey until I pick up one of these books, and then it brainwashes me into thinking maybe hockey is really important. You should definitely read it, and when you pick up the first one, you're probably going to be like, why am I reading this book about these people who are so deeply obsessed with hockey? It's almost weird. But I promise you, it's just gonna get so much better and make so much sense because hockey just plays such a huge role into the politics of the town and into all the bad decisions that they make. Number 3 is Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. Or is it Tomorrow and Tomorrow? I always get this wrong. Tomorrow times 3. This is a book that when it came out, I think it was 2020. I actually don't know. It was a little bit ago, and the year that it came out, it was everywhere. It was so popular. People were saying such good things about it, but still I was not intrigued by it at all. Like, I don't know, every time people spoke about it, even though they were saying positive things, I was just like, that still doesn't sound good to me. I don't know why, but I feel like this being on my top 3 books of 2025 is like the universe saying, I told you so. This is another book that I'm crediting for really making me know what I want to read in 2026 and the types of books that I want to read. I really loved the way that this was written. There was this like stream of consciousness type of writing that really held my attention, and I like just needed that at the time. It's also a love story, such a sad one, and there's lots of focus on platonic love as well. At number 2, we have The Favorites, and for a while there I kind of thought that this was going to be my favorite book, but something else came along. This book is such a fun book, and I love all the drama in it. I love dramatic books. I think that's what we're realizing here. But one thing about this book is, you know, when people are like, I can't put this down, I couldn't put this book down, like this is the definition of that. I've never related more to that when it comes to this book. I think this book is over 400 pages and I read it in like under 4 hours. So I read it in a 24-hour reading vlog, but still, I was so addicted to this. I feel like if you're gonna take one book from this video, it should be this one. Even though it's not my number 1, I just feel like this is the type of book that people with different tastes can really enjoy. People who like different genres can enjoy. It's just so entertaining. I also really hope that this ends up as a movie, TV show. I mean, I think it'd be better as a movie, but I would just love to see this on screen. I think it would be amazing on screen. This is the type of book where like shock value is important and like the little reveals are so important to the experience. And usually when books are like that, I never reread them, but this is a book that I feel like I could reread it for a second time and be gagged again because so much happens. Like, surely I don't remember all of it. And number 1, my favorite book of 2025 is My Friends by Frederick Backman. Frederick Backman has 2 books in the top 5. What an iconic author. The discussions on friendship in this book makes me feel like I've never been a good friend for my entire life. This is another thing about Frederick Backman. His books always makes me want to do some self-reflection. The way these friends were bound together throughout their entire childhood, I loved reading about that. I also loved seeing the parallels between Louisa and the friends that she's learning about. She's like learning all these stories about them, and I just love seeing the parallels of their lives and like how much they had in common. It's like if they were born in the same time, they definitely would have been friends. She would have definitely been one of them, and I just feel like that whole thing is just so wholesome. I already mentioned that I love the way Frederick Backman writes about human connection, but I also loved the way he wrote about art in this book. It was so good. As I mentioned, I'm reading The Winners, and one of the notes that I wrote down as I was reading this is that I feel like Frederick Backman might actually hate men more than me. And my Goodreads review for My Friend says, Frederick Backman always tells us men are trash, but in a poetic way. So yeah, I love these books. I love Frederick Backman, and I think he's an author that I will always be looking out for. But yeah, those are the 56 books that I read in 2025 ranked. Let's go taste test the cookies. All right, moment of truth. Why do I have no faith in myself? They look pretty good. They also smell amazing. That's so good. I feel like this is my favorite kind of cookie too. Like chewier and kind of like bulky. That is fantastic. If you read any of the books that I mentioned in my wrap up, let me know down below how you felt about them, if you liked them, if you hated them. What was your favorite book of 2025? What was your least favorite book of 2025? I would love to know everyone's thoughts and opinions. Also, if you got to this point of the video, comment a cookie emoji. Thank you guys so much for watching and coming on this journey with me. I know my 2025 reading wrap up is kind of late, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. If you did, give it a like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next week. Bye!